Again, we should start in about a minute as people kind of join here. Give us about one more minute and we'll get started. But thank you guys for joining.
Yeah. And just to let you know, all you coming in fine. Your volume is fine. Sound is fine.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and get started. As people join, they'll kind of join in the conversation, but I do want to be respectful of you guys' time. And again, thank you so much for joining. George Matlock, I'm the chair of the Economic Development Council for NAACP DeKalb. With that, I always like to start our meetings with our mission at the NAACP. Our mission is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human rights and civil rights, eliminating discrimination, and accelerating the well-being, education, and economic security of Black people and all people of color, which is an important mission, one that the NAACP has championed for many, many years. I feel it's a call in my heart to do things and stay active, and I'm pleased to be able to bring you this programming. I would be remiss if I didn't thank our past participants who participated last month, Dr. Lori Mans and Mr. C. Moody Jr., facilitated a phenomenal discussion to really talk about what are the pitfalls of entrepreneurs, how do we become successful. Mr. Moody was very transparent to talk about those early years in his business, what made him successful, how did he persevere, and how did he build a construction company that has awarded over $3 billion in contracts to this day. Please go back and look at any previous content that we have out there. We have our YouTube channel available. Again, most of our information you can get at naacpdekalb.org. Also critical is while you're there looking at the site, please consider joining the NAACP, whether it's a local chapter near you or feel free to join our DeKalb chapter. It's the people like you and like me who get involved and get engaged is where things happen. And so that's a critical piece. Also, we have our calendar of events there where you can stay engaged with us. One of the things I critically like to highlight is our Juneteenth celebration that's coming up. We are about to celebrate Juneteenth, especially here in Georgia. We are partnering with the New Black Wall Street, which is a thriving community of businesses out in Southwest DeKalb. We're going to bring a slew of programming the whole week of the 19th. We're celebrating Juneteenth on the 19th, so come out that day. There's going to be some breakfast. There's going to be some concert activities. And then Saturday, the Economic Development Committee, we're actually going to have a symposium, right? And that's from 10 to noon. We're going to have a quick lunch that's going to be sponsored by Ariman, who is a thriving Jamaican restaurant here, who's grown his business from food truck to actually having a location in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We're also going to have a myriad of different professionals, whether they are legacy building, generational wealth within the community. And then we have a moderator, Mr. Butts, who is a adjunct professor at Morehouse. He also is an acclaimed author and past SBA. He was the regional director of the SBA. And so he's going to moderate, who is a dynamic individual and a fun moderator. So look forward to coming out and having a good time with us on that Saturday. I think it's the 22nd, if I have the date correct, in June, and come celebrate Juneteenth with us. But let's get back to this at hand and our meeting tonight. And I get an opportunity to interview a good friend of mine who is a dynamic individual within the space of AI. Let me just tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll go into this conversation. I'm pleased to introduce Curtis Evans, a seasoned expert with over 25 years of experience in the tech industry. Curtis has an impressive background of solution architect, technical consultant, and IT operative manager. His career spans across diverse sectors, including telecommunications, banking, media, and the public agency arena, where he has crafted cutting-edge digital solutions that significantly enhance operations and customer engagement. In 2016, Curtis joined Amazon Web Services, where he now serves as developer advocate. In this role, he plays a pivotal part in educating a wide array of audiences, including students, career changers, and business professionals about the ins and outs of cloud computing and generative AI. His efforts are critical in shaping the skills of those entering into transitioning from their digital workforce or making technology accessible and understandable. Curtis hails from Columbus, South Carolina. He currently lives in Atlanta with his wife and two daughters. He has an education from Clark Atlanta, and he also went to Georgia Tech University here in Atlanta. He's a great friend. He's a great innovator, and I enjoy all the conversations we have about AI, which I'm passionate about and is helping change my life. I want to integrate it into my business. And why don't we start there with, as we really look at this conversation, Curtis, thank you for joining me. I appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation and further the talks that we've had about AI. What exactly is AI, and how can we as small business owners integrate it, or why should we even care about it?
Well, thank you for having me, George. Thank you guys for having me as well. Very dynamic programming you've got going on here. Super excited to be a part of. In that long introduction you provided, but basically to summarize it is, I do whatever I can to help people better understand technology. And in particular for businesses, small businesses like yourselves, just to help how you can best enable it. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI, generative AI in particular today. So to kind of answer your question, AI as a broad technology domain can be best thought of as just being able to tell computers how to think and act like humans. That's a very broad definition of AI. We'll get into generative AI specifically here in a second, but in kind of keeping with that AI theme, if you think about things like computers and systems that can help predict stock markets or help predict the weather, things that do computer vision, or even what we're starting to see more common in society as self-driving or autonomous vehicles, those are all components and sectors within artificial intelligence. As far as generative AI is concerned, you can think of generative AI as more of just a specific form of AI that uses techniques that we don't have a whole lot of time to get into. But if you think about things like deep networks or excuse me, machine learning or deep learning, or these things that are called neural networks within technology that are composed of very similar neurons that we have in our brains that help us think and develop over time. When you start taking all of those specialized artificial intelligence techniques and combining them with scores and scores of data, I'm talking internet-sized data, books, articles, audio transcripts, video scripts. Bring those two components together, and then you teach computers to further not only think and act like humans, but come up with content, whether it's text, whether it's audio, whether it's video, things that have never been created before. That's basically the essence of generative AI. So again, there's the broader AI, and then there's the more specific AI. Another way I like to kind of explain it is, I talked about computer vision a second ago with respect to AI. Computer vision can help detect faces. There's technology out there that can scan our faces and say, that's George, this is Curtis. Generative AI, on the other hand, can actually learn about our faces and then go and create new faces that don't even exist. So hopefully that's just kind of a broad understanding that further explains it. Now, as far as why small businesses should be concerned about it is, well, it's gotten our attention. Right. Yeah, sure. Our attention in terms of generative AI is now becoming a very disruptive technology to where there's still a lot that has to be solved. There's probably a lot of areas that are still underdeveloped today. I think we as small business owners should just pay attention to the trends and get a better understanding of how our businesses may or may not be impacted at some point. It's very akin to, for those of you that may have been around during the original internet, it's certainly worth your paying attention and seeing where everything goes.
So to that great lead into my next question. I'm a small business owner. I have big ideas with little money, right? And so as I look to try to integrate AI, how is AI accessible to small business with limited technology budgets?
I think the budget question really depends on if whether or not you're a consumer of AI and generative AI technologies versus someone that actually wants to build a product or service using generative AI. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get the build part out of the way. If you're someone that's actually looking to build products and services with generative AI, that's where a lot of the expense is going to come. You're going to have sizable budgets, investments, or in some cases, maybe even partners to be able to help you build something that uses generative AI.
What would be a business case that why would I think that I needed to build AI to help my business? What would be is serious, or I guess
that's really up to the business owner themselves. If I'm a small business in the media and film industry, am I interested in building AI technologies that's going to allow the AI to be able to replace some of what I do with cameras or some of what I do with special effects or imaging? Again, very promising, very possible, but also very expensive. Okay. Now, as far as the companies that want to just take advantage of some of the generative AI services and capabilities that are out there, that's going to still require some investment, but not as much. And what I mean by that is if you think about some of the companies or some of the products and services today that are now starting to inject generative AI into their capabilities, one of the more prominent examples I can think of is something like Adobe Photoshop. For those small businesses that have used Adobe Photoshop before, prior to generative AI, you probably had to have a photo or video or some digital asset already in existence to be able to use in Photoshop. Now you can simply, by way of a prompt or by way of a request, to say, hey, Adobe Photoshop, take this portion of my video and inject a forest or inject an image of a car in the desert. Anything that's going to be needed for your use case. And then you're now allowing Adobe Photoshop with this generative AI capabilities to be able to put it in there for you. So again, to summarize, how much you are going to spend requires is a factor of whether or not you're going to be using it or if you're going to actually be creative. So those are the things you have to be aware of.
perfect. And one of the things that I've started to use just in my social media piece that's been beneficial to me. Now, many of the social media platforms have AI generative pieces in it, right? So I write a very poorly written post. I get my little Ask AI and it rewrites it for me and makes it a lot more communicative and gets to the point a little bit better. And there's some conversations about, is that authentic to me or is that now? I think it makes me sound better and eliminates the misspelled words, right? So
those are some of the ways that the technologies are starting to become better. The example George is using, by the way, is a form of what they call text summarization, where a generative AI tool can take your text or your input, compare it against just the scores of text and natural language that it's already been able to process and learn and kind of match it up against it. So great use case. I think it's going to get better. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the concerns we might want to be aware of in terms of just whether or not, fairness and bias and those other things are being properly addressed within those kind of tools.
That again moves us right into that as we talk about AI and the impact of day to day. Where I'm using, I feel like I have used ChatGPT as a platform that I like because what I've learned is I keep threads of information going. I upload or copy articles made specific to that chat and I upload it in there. And I feel like I put less information in there to get as much good information. So it feels like it's learning my authentic voice. How do you feel like we can use it on that day-to-day case operation, or how can we ingrain it in our day-to-day business solutions?
Sure. If your business is in the business of requiring catchy marketing or something that's going to entice your customer to see what the benefits of your product or service is going to be, that's always going to be a good use case for taking advantage of generative AI in some of your day-to-day operations. I would say the same would be said in any other forms of communication. You've already provided some examples. We all want to be able to reach out to our customers, express our appreciation for how they're benefiting our businesses, and may not always be able to do it in the most poignant or effective ways. Right. Using generative AI tooling is going to be a lot. It's going to make it in some ways easier to be able to generate that. So to take advantage for it to be able to support use cases like that. So yeah, there's marketing, there's text. I would also think in some cases, and again, we're talking more broad AI now. If you all have needs for being able to take some of the data you have about your customers, some of the anonymous data, I want to be clear about that. We don't want to take anything that's public.
One thing, you know, that's a good place that we go down, because I am a little afraid of how much information how much of my own information do I put in there, or how much customer information. So what is that?
So when I talk about anonymous data is that anytime you want to be able to use data about your customer to feed into an AI tool to do any sort of forecasting or data analysis, make sure that you're taking out the most sensitive information, their phone numbers, their addresses, too much information that's gonna let the world know more about them than your customers would want to know. And I would say follow some of the industry regulations and guidelines as to how to avoid that. There are even tools out there now that can basically anonymize first name and last name, age, maybe location, just anything that, again, you don't want to give too much information away about your customer, but keep the most important data in there about the sales, about the transaction, about the products that they purchase, how often that they're buying. And those things you can use pretty safely in terms of being able to analyze customer trends. The AI tools will now be able to help you say, hey, we're noticing that, you know, this product or this widget is being sold best on rainy Saturdays or something to that effect. And then you can start using that information more intelligently to put together those marketing campaigns or create seasonal sales or any kind of product or service lists to help your business along. So a lot of ways that you can use it to your advantage. You just got to make sure that you're able to do so in the right ways.
You know, I think that's great. One of the things that I've been trying to do where, you know, within retail, when I have a retail operation, is that day parts are very important, right? So how I communicate there's a certain spending and shopping habits of customers who shop in the mornings, that shop in the evenings, that come on lunch, right? And trying to really get my communications, and also trying to integrate, because it's hard to always communicate to people exactly how they want to all these different customers. But how do I use this reporting, pulling it into AI, saying, okay, now I want communications to that early morning a customer who wants a product that gets them up in the morning. I need communications for a customer who may have problems sleeping, right? And so that has helped me, where I've definitely been able to use generative AI and ChatGPT specifically to kind of hone in on those pieces. So no, I appreciate that. What challenges might small businesses face to implement AI solutions, and what can we do to really kind of either give us a shortcut or use AI for the shortcut, or just overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, challenges are plenty. I wish we could talk about them all because there are so many. But some of the things I would want you guys to focus on as you're starting to think or consider using some component of AI or generative AI in your business, just understand that there will be a level of training and education, not only for yourselves as business owners, but maybe even for employees or staff, so that they too can start to understand some of these aspects and components that we're talking about. You've got to be mindful of the actual tools that you want to use and how these tools are created and where they're getting their data sources from. What I mean by that is you want to make sure that the data is accurate, you want to make sure that the data is fair, and you want to make sure that there's no biases. You know, going back to the point where you're trying to use some of these tools to create a creative marketing campaign or write a letter to your customers. You know, definitely make sure that those the end result of the messaging is going to be exactly what it is that you want. Don't just rely on the tools to just go and blatantly put that information out there without you validating it. So cost is always going to be a challenge. You know, I talked about, you know, whether or not if you're a user or if you are a builder of products. Regardless of which one you are, understand what some of the cost components of the tooling that you use are, because quite frankly, you may see some early success with some of the tooling helping you generate more sales, but is it reducing your profits? Meaning, is the use of the generative AI tools costing you more as you start to scale its use? Because oftentimes these tools are a product of how much input data that you're putting in or how much output data that's being taken out of the system. So you definitely got to be mindful of that. I would almost equate it to, and I will caveat this by saying I'm not a small business owner at the moment, so you guys will know a lot better than me about what your unit costs are. You know what it costs for you to deliver your goods and services and what that amounts to the back end in terms of profit. So always pay attention to the bottom line. And then one last thing I would also caution against is make sure you use some of these tools so that you can benefit all your customers. I don't think you'll have that great of a use case if you're doing it, kind of ad hoc, but just for certain customers and not the entirety of your customer base. There may be cases where that might work, but again, everybody do your homework to make sure that the benefit and the ROI is there.
And this may take us off a little bit, and let me think about this correctly. If this is machine learning or generative AI, but I know retailers, it's the part that I'm always interested in hearing, and many of the large box retailers move to self-checkout, right, and use machines to kind of replace that teller experience. And what they found was, due to the shrinkage, due to the customer experience, that is not necessarily the best place. Is that kind of what you're saying, or is that a different type of piece there? Or give me some examples that can kind of hone in to wrap a small business mind around it.
I think that use case might be.
Okay.
I'll just have to go back and reiterate the fact that, have a good solid understanding of what level of inputs you're having to put into the system and to what extent are you getting outputs back out. Because again, that's going to drive a lot of the cost. When you talk about generative AI tooling, those who are building the tools, who are having to spend a lot of time and money on the investments up front, have to justify their ROI on the back end. So I know you mentioned ChatGPT several times.
Right.
For those of us that are using it or experimenting with it, we know that there's a free component to it.
Sure.
I would invite you to go and take a look at what the subscription version of ChatGPT entails.
Sure.
Take a look at just the monthly or the annual price, whatever the discounts are today, and understand, is that something I can make an investment in? If I were to make that investment, what are going to be my ultimate benefits out of it? So it's really kind of a hard thing to put your finger directly on. But again, I would just be mindful of just, at what price am I getting for my usage, and is there ultimately going to be some benefit for my business?
Absolutely, absolutely. What about, again, and trying to just hone in on how I would look at using it, or maybe there's tools out there. I know from an HR perspective, or with my payroll provider, right, from a communications, there are now built-in communications in my payroll solutions where I communicate more with the employee. Now they communicate more with the tool and engage, and I look at reporting, or I look at problem solving, right? They no longer need me to engage with the clock in, clock out procedure. They know, and it actually tells them you clocked in too early, you clocked in too late, and that has now eliminated a lot of that kind of waiver piece on me to kind of, from a management perspective. Is that a kind of more of a case of my payroll solution providing some of that? Okay.
I think that would be a good example. But basically, anywhere you can drive what I would call efficiencies into the business.
Okay.
I know an area that's really starting to take off now are call centers. And, that's, in some ways, it's kind of a good and bad scenario. Good in the sense that these AI tools are becoming a lot better, more so than just kind of your traditional voice response units, where you have to try to speak the right word or press the right button. The way generative AI is now being integrated into call center facilities is becoming vastly improved. A good thing for the small business owner. The downside of that, it's costing jobs.
Sure.
So I would never encourage on this platform to replace your call center staff unless it's absolutely necessary. But if you're a business that never had call center capabilities before, and you now discover an AI technology that can include one in your business at an affordable cost, then yeah, I would say by all means look into it.
To that, I think that's a great point. I actually have a friend who is in more of a technical low voltage space, and he actually, from a dispatching perspective, is looking at how this, because dispatching is something that's similar to call center. It can be a little bit more of a similar process. How do you staff? How do you look at staff utilization? How do you look to make a tech most efficient? And now AI is kind of moving into that space and making, the use of even the tools that they have, where if you're looking at dynamic staffing, someone's scheduled in real time and what they're doing out there is making a difference in some other businesses. No, great piece there. What role does this play in effective AI kind of replacing? You talk about the small business person, our employees, how they are engaged with us, what that means for us. This fear that AI is going to replace employees or replace us, is that real? What's your perspective on it? Should we be fearful?
I think some jobs clearly will be impacted. I mentioned the call center a second ago. I think there are going to be some scenarios where if you're a call center employee right now, you may want to start thinking about that next career.
Yes.
In a lot of cases too, I think you'll see some similar impacts that you may have seen in kind of the manufacturing space. I mean, look at how many automotive manufacturers have robotics in their operations right now. The same with goods and services that now have machinery moving product from here to there. So yeah, I think there is going to be some impact. At the same time, though, I think there's also a huge opportunity to provide skills and availabilities within the space to be able to build and support and operate generative AI tools. I wish we could go into some of the science and some of the dynamics that goes into actually being able to train a lot of the generative AI we don't see. I mean, we talk about tools like ChatGPT all the time. All we really see are what's considered the prompting up front, is to where you put the input in.
Right.
What goes on behind the scenes, quite effectively solved. And what I mean by that is there are these components on the back end called large language models, or in some cases image models, that ultimately have to take those inputs and then, based on all this data that it's been trained on, be able to produce the output that you're looking for, whether it's text, image, audio, or whatever. There's huge demand in that space for skills. So for those that can really look to maybe replace what they used to do with something that's new and exciting in the future, huge opportunity here. So I would certainly keep in mind there. So one would only hope that in the end, you've got more than just a zero-sum game in jobs lost and jobs replaced. And what I mean by that is, if I were losing my job in a call center, but at the same time gaining my job as an AI trainer, chances are I'm going to be making more money, and I'll have a job opportunity that's far more marketable for me and my future. So let's certainly hope that's the case.
Perfect there. A little bit of a sidebar, I would say we are definitely concerned with economic development, right? And that's keeping our community employed, keeping our, gainfully employed, and succeeding and being able to beyond pay our bills, but generate wealth, right? So if I'm currently working in a call center, or I own a call center, or I'm looking at, what would you say tomorrow I need to wake up? What's the baby step I need to do? What are some building blocks that could take me to a thriving career, could take me to a developer advocate? What would be some practical pieces, whether it's education related, going to get some tools, or how can I start just moving forward?
For me, education is always going to be. You want to retool your mind so that your mind can go and possess the kind of skills that's going to have the computers and the systems have a mind, if that makes sense. So understanding how the technology works, maybe even going and getting some training or certification in a programming space. In my role, we talk to students, we talk to career transitioners, we talk to those that are 30-year veterans that want to kind of retool and skill themselves. So I would really focus on understanding where the technology trends are going and finding out how I can go and pick up skills in that area. I mentioned the internet boom some 25, 30 years ago now. That created a shift in the demand for programmers and skilled web designers to where a lot of employers were starting to forego the traditional 4-year college degree for those skills. They were like, I don't need you to go learn Shakespeare. I need you to go learn Python or JavaScript. But programming languages that's going to help.
Lost sound. Can you hear me?
Technology. We're talking too much. Yeah, exactly. So, hey, Nico, if we're still rolling there, please let me know or give me a thumbs up. Let's see if if we're still rolling.
Yeah, whatever you did, that fixed the sound, George.
I may just hold. Is Curtis audible? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect.
All right, there we go. I think it just needed to rethink there. But I mean, yeah, a little bit of so sure, we kind of caught most of that again, and we're kind of talking about what's that next step for someone looking to get into the field like Curtis is in, and you know, education is part of it. I know you were talking about can we use some of these tools? Man, I have learned a lot by using AI now, right? Saying, okay, give me more on this, or you know, even funny enough, I used it the other day. I was meeting with someone and I noticed that they had a book in their hand, right? I never read. And so I Googled, you know, AI the book real quick, and it gave me a summary on the book. And I sounded really intelligent because I was like, man, this book is really cool. And let me tell you about what you're reading. And they're like, okay, this dude is better than most, maybe. But so, you know, how can we use AI? You know, I know we're using it in a business case perspective. How just making us better, how making us better people, making me, you know, I use it to better time. Can it make me a better father? Can it, you know, what if we use a bigger idea, how can it just make it better?
Interesting question. And I'm going to give the viewers the benefit of the doubt here. I'm sure we're a pretty smart, pretty intelligent assemblage of people here. If anything, outside of any sort of work usage, I would almost just consider maybe using generative AI to just validate some of the things that you already know. I don't have any specific cases right now, but if there is a topic, a discussion that you're having with someone that you know you feel firm in your belief that not only that you're right, but you're accurate, compare any outputs that you may get from some of these generative AI tools. Because again, I talked earlier about we've also got to make sure that not only are these things effective, but making sure that they're fair. If you're talking about relying on these artificial services that's going to use some data source to train, if they're right, what they output may look very different if they're being trained by something from the great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. versus, oh, I don't know, an Adolf Hitler maybe. Yeah, so just think about it in those terms. You know, the systems are only as good as the data that it's being trained on. So I would really just kind of focus on maybe taking a very holistic understanding of what it means to be an AI system or something that's using a large language model. Because even now, we're already starting to see in some parts of society what we call these deep fakes. Right. And unfortunately, society at large is being fooled by this. I mean, it takes nothing to put together a video of LeBron James, who has a very average press conference after a game, and then 30 minutes later, someone's putting out a fake of his press conference where he's trashing his players. Those are the things he never said in the actual press conference, but someone's gone out and somewhat maliciously put all these bad words in LeBron's mouth, and it looks very real in some cases. So just, you know, think before you believe and truly understand the how and why someone would even do that. And quite frankly, just make sure that you don't fall victim to it. So.
And you don't have that. data collection, data is king in small businesses. You know, we all are trying to hold on to our information. How does that play a role for small business when it comes to AI? And then who owns it? If you know, I'm putting all this information into ChatGPT or another platform, and definitely discuss some of you guys' platforms as well. Who owns it? Is it still mine? The product that comes out of it, you know, I put some stuff in it, it gives me some stuff back. I get something I really like. Is that mine or is it theirs?
If there's a lawyer out there, I have to have them come on after they've read the T's and C's, terms and conditions,
Yeah.
the product that you're using, and shed some light on that. And part of the concern is definitely why you want to go and anonymize the data in the first place. I would think in most cases, when you start using the tooling, the first thing you want to do is to check and see if you have the option to say, hey, I don't want anything that I input into the system captured.
Okay.
The companies themselves, and this goes back to the ethics and the transparency, that they too have to be a little more forward about whether or not the information that you share is going to be used for their good or not. Definitely got to be mindful of that. I would say as long as it's in your possession, that yes, you are the rightful owner, but the minute you go and share it with someone else, I think those ownership rights have diminished in some things. So be very careful about what information you share. And quite frankly, I go back to what I was saying earlier, as it relates to your customers, I think you always want to be very protective of that, because we also talked about how there's a lot still to be developed within this space. You saving your customers' data for future use cases that don't even exist now might be a good thing.
Right.
I mean, quite frankly, 2-3 years down the road from now, there may be the most effective, the most useful, the most ethical piece of AI that comes out. And then you may be in a position to build some level of customization where you take a copy of that model or that version, make a localized copy of it, and then use it for, just for the benefit of your business. Again, maybe a little more expensive, but you'll have to start to weigh the development and the business costs for you against, doing something wrong that's going to ultimately reflect negatively.
Perfect lead in for my next question then. How can small business owners stay informed about AI advances relative to their field?
I would recommend that you continue to just rely on those same effective, reputable sources of information that you use today. I don't want to name names, but if there is a business publication, whether it's local or national, that you rely on and use today for your research, for your news, for your information, follow what they are saying about AI that exists within their publications now. Because I'm sure if you've relied on them and found them useful today, they should be just as equally effective as far as reporting on AI use cases and trends within your industry today. I would be very careful of what I would consider kind of the kid on the block in that space, because quite frankly, they could be using the very same tooling to create content that may or may not be accurate. So again, got to do your homework in that space, and I would again start with those sources of information that I've always provided. Stick with what's tried and true.
Perfect. What advice would you give to a small business owner who is skeptical about the value of AI and how it could be ingrained in their business?
The first two I would give is be alert and be patient. What we talked about at the outset is that this is a very disruptive technology. Pay attention to how it's currently or maybe in the future going to impact your business. But don't be so quick to just kind of rush in to take on the latest trends without making sure that you've done your homework, you've done your field testing, you've done some level of assuring that the data that you're inputting is valid, making sure that the data you get out of it is also valid, and really just allowing yourself and your business enough time to make sure that, yeah, this is something that's effective. You certainly don't want your skepticism to, completely get in the way. I would say, certainly listen to the data, the factual data, listen to some of the industry trends, and definitely listen to your customers. I mean, I think if you combine those together, that should help, allay some fears if you have some skepticism. Ultimately, be patient and definitely.
Yeah, well, hey, I've learned so much, and I'm excited about this field. I'm excited about where it's going. Nico, I know you were monitoring the chat. I don't know if some of our participants have decided to ask some questions. We do have some more time. If you'll field a couple questions, maybe we have a couple out there. Nico, do we have any questions?
Right now, George, we don't have any questions. I think everybody's just absorbing all that information that we had, and I think they're trying to work out some questions or some thoughts in their head at this point. So maybe in a little time.
Perfect. Well, that's exactly what we have time, and we're going to further this conversation. We're going to keep dialoguing on how to make us better, right? The whole platform about economic development is one about business security, right? And just having the knowledge. Curtis talked heavily about how knowledge is key and education is key, but I think we have a question coming in. So I think Albert's on there. What Nico, you may have to read that one back to me. It popped up pretty quickly.
Yes, it said, is there a way to see some of his work with AI? And that's from Fields.
That's a hard one to answer because a lot of what we work on is not publicly available. And what I mean by that is, okay, we mentioned at the top, I work for Amazon Web Services. Within the AWS ecosystem of services, we provide generative AI tooling that our customers can go and leverage to be able to build for their businesses. Take for an example, an automotive service repair shop. They could build some custom tooling that will allow their service technicians to not have to go and read directly out of a manual to find information. They can do something a lot more interactive to say, hey, I've got this 1995 Toyota in the bay now. I'm seeing some leaking coming out of the engine. I don't know anything about cars. I'm setting myself up here. What should I look for next? And then their custom tools will help service their needs. I don't actually get to see a lot of that myself. So that's a long way to say that I don't have a whole lot to share in that space. What I do have to share, and yes, I will consider it somewhat of a shameless plug, and we'll share this information when we go there. I did develop a course on the Coursera platform. For those of you that may be familiar with Coursera, we'll provide some information, but on Coursera.org, I did build an easy to follow training class called Fundamentals of Generative AI for Beginners. And it's really an opportunity for you to spend about 4 hours with me talking extensively with some visuals, with some graphics, just to give some better understanding of what generative AI is. It takes you from the very beginning of the days of the 50s when the first big computers first came about. Computers have always had some component of AI in them because they've basically always been here to help solve problems. And then I'll walk you through a reasonable timeline of how some of the additional capabilities like neural networks that I talked about earlier, the whole onslaught of data with the web. It's basically a good way for you to go and get a little more exposure about what generative AI is. It's purely from a technical standpoint, I'll tell you that, but it is easy enough tech for non-techies to follow. So we'll share some information for you, and the course is free. Go out and take an audit version of the course, and it'll give you a great little 4-hour overview of what we've been talking about.
Perfect.
Is there put that in the link, George?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll send out some communications again, and we will keep communicating. If we can, go to our NAACP DeKalb.org. There's a jot form out there. Click on the link or sign up link, That way you can get involved with us. You can join our committee. Many of these things I will repost. I will repost on our social media. And again, we will have this content out there on our YouTube. But man, thank you so much. It's been a phenomenal conversation. I think, you know, having thought leaders like you, look like us in this space, it's a testament to who you are. And how successful we can be if we collectively come together and share knowledge. I want to again plug Juneteenth.